Welcome back and thanks for watching. Today I brought out a Harrington and Richardson. It's a single shot 12 gauge. It's model Topper model 88. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sanding it down and refinishing it. I want to darken up the wood on it a little bit. What's been done to it is it was once lightly sanded, and it's got a coat of the linseed oil on it. So what I'm going to be doing is, since there's no finish on it, I'll lightly sand it with 120 grit, and I have some stain that I made. We'll darken it up and put a couple clear coats on it. So go ahead and start with, want to make sure it's not loaded up. Nothing in there, and while it's opened up, we'll go ahead and take it down. Go ahead and put that aside there. Now, pulling off the buttstock part of it, it's just a Phillips head screwdriver there. As you need is a Phillips for that. And then inside there's going to be a socket. You can use either a flathead or a socket for it. And I find it easier just to use the socket. And it's a 9/16 socket. Just slides right in. Just break it loose and then take the wrench off there and loosen it up by hand. And it'll just come right apart. Go ahead and set the hard parts aside. Pop the bolt out. Make sure you don't lose the washer that's on there, because that's important. So go ahead and take those guys out. And like I said, they're here. You've got just see 2, 4, 6 different screws, and they can only go in one place, so it's pretty hard to get them mixed up. So what I'll end up doing is starting out with just the 80 grit. See how it comes off. If it's too hard to get off of there, I'll sand with something rougher than that. I'm barely putting any pressure to it. You can see it's coming right off of there. See, I'll sand a little more off of the one side here and see if I can bring it over to the side where it's still on there, just to give you a better comparison. So you can see, I don't know if you're able to see it, but it's light here. It's kind of darker on this side here. This is what I want here before I start putting my stain on there. I want to get all that off. Alright, so now I sanded it down. What I ended up doing, I didn't go with the 80 grit. I did 120 grit, and I did my steel wool and took everything off. So we'll go ahead and get started with the stain that I made and put that on and see how it comes out. Until I've stained it for the first time, I'm not sure how many coats I want to put on it. So let's go ahead and get started here. What you want to do first is you want to make sure everything's all wiped down, because whatever you don't wipe off of there, you put that stain on, your fingerprints are going to be in the place of that. So we'll make sure to wipe all that down. So I don't know if you can see that. It looks pretty ugly, but it'll come out to look really nice. And you can't really see a difference putting it on here as for what the tone's going to be in the wood. Not yet anyways. You'd be surprised. So you wipe it down on there, try and just wipe it in as if you're staining something. Usually with stains, what you'll end up doing is leaving the stain on if you want it darker, and if you don't want it really dark, you end up putting it on and wiping it right off. With this one here, just put it on there. And once you got it all on, make sure you put it in the light, go around it. You can kind of see if there might have been a spot that you missed. And just go over it. And if it's not a spot that you missed and you feel you went over that spot, it's just already dry there. You can see the stuff's drying up pretty quick. So I'll go ahead and let it hang and dry out. See if I want another tone added to it. There we go. We'll let it dry up and see how it comes out. Alright, so after 3 coats of the stain, this is what we've come up with. And it looks so much nicer. It's a lot darker than it was before, and we'll really notice the difference after the finish goes on there. That unfinished. So let's go ahead and we'll get started with the first coat. So the finish I'll be putting on there today, it's tung oil finish and it's a low gloss. So I like to go, just so I don't have anything extra on there, I'll go ahead and pinch out what's on there and I'll run it down. Look at that. And depending on how the coats go on and what it looks like is when I'll figure on how many coats I want to put on there. So we'll start with just this one. And you can go either way. You can go from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom, but you want to make sure and follow it through. Follow it all the way through there. You see any runs, go ahead and just go back on it. Get that run out of there. It's the last thing you want. And if you do end up with a run in there, sometimes you'll put a finish on and notice after it dries you'll have a run in there. Just go ahead and screen it and you'll just end up putting another coat on there. You might have to lightly screen it, and then you might have to do more than just a light screen on it. So there's the difference there. Alright, I'll go ahead and finish this up and we'll get back to you. So after the 3 coats of stain, and we did 5 coats of the finish on here, this is how it turned out. Really nice. Let's go ahead and put it back together. We'll start with just putting the rear of the buttstock on there. It's got the screw here that goes in the back, and like I was saying before, you can either use a screwdriver or the socket. It's the 9/16, and you either need a really long screwdriver or a really long extension. And sometimes what you'll have to do after refinishing, a stock, as for the finish that you put on there, sometimes it builds up. There's nothing here that's built up. Just thought I might point that out, because sometimes you'll be putting the gun back together and you're thinking, why isn't this fitting right? Well, it could be just the finish is built up and you need to get rid of it. So, but like I said, nothing's built up on here. So. And what I like to do is get everything just finger tight, make sure it's going to fit right before I go tightening it up. Just like that. So I'll go ahead and I'll snug that up so I can and you don't want to over tighten it either. Otherwise you might end up cracking it. And I like to kind of evenly tighten them. I'll just do one at a time, little by little, because again, you don't want to over tighten these guys. So here we left our screw in to make sure we didn't lose it. Before we put that back in, there's this part of the stock here we got to put on there. And we left the screws in there so we didn't lose them either. Slide those in there, slide this guy in here, hold the lines up, goes right in, and put the screw in. to tighten that. So there it is, that's how it came out. And seeing from the start, you can see a big difference in that. As for the tone of it, no, I think it's beautiful. Before I thought it was pretty ugly. Again, it was just a cheap shotgun, you know. Wasn't expecting too much of it. So now it's beautiful. I think it's a hanger, definitely. One of the things I'll talk to you guys about is the way I did the refinish on it. The instructional on the refinish that I use, you know, it tells you to put a coat on, screen it, let it dry. Or I'm sorry, put a coat on, let it dry. After it dries from, you know, 6 to 8 hours, whatever it is, screen it and then put another coat on. If you're just putting thin coats on, don't worry about it drying for 6 to 8, 12 hours, whatever it is. And just continuously, you know, put a thin coat on there, it's going to dry faster. Don't worry about screening it. Put another thin coat on there, you know. After, you know, several thin coats you put on there, then you might go ahead and screen it, you know, and then put your last coat on there. Again, make sure it's dry, though, before you go about screening it. So hope I have been able to give you guys some tips and whatnot. Let me know if you have any questions. And thanks again for watching.